In this video, I'll be installing the controversial MaxSpeedingRod coilovers on my 1991 Lexus LS400. Then when I'm done installing the coilovers, I'll be giving a review on how I think they feel and how they look. I don't really have a lot of experience with coilovers in general. I've only installed them on this car before, so I don't have much of a reference point. But with that, I've never actually driven this car with the coilovers on. When I put them on the first time, the snow just started coming down and winter had set in. But I got my ride height completely set on these coilovers, and I'll be doing a review and test on them due to popular demand by a lot of you guys. But again, like I said, I don't have much of a reference point with any other coilover brands, so I'm not really going to know how bad or good it is compared to any others, but I should be able to get a feel on how they are on the car and if it causes any problems in general, like just blowing out. But I don't have very much experience with fitment on cars, so my fitment won't necessarily be perfect. It'll just be lowered, and I think it'll look a lot better. Possibly I'll be getting some small spacers for those wheels when I put them on, so it'll sit a lot more flush with the fenders. But we'll see how they look with the coilovers on and see how they ride. I have new tires coming in for those wheels, and I have an alignment set up for Friday of this week. And yeah, we'll be able to see how they ride. But before I can do anything, I need to get these lugs broke free, and I need to put this car up on all fours. I already lied. I'm only going to do the fronts, and then I'm going to flip it around and do the rears. I forgot that I have a lot of stuff in here from working on the Volkswagen. So I'm just going to do the fronts first, and then I'll flip the car around and do the back too. But you do need to get the wheels off. All right, I got one side out already. I needed a little bit of a refresher since I hadn't done this in like 5 months. But it was super easy, just as I remembered, so I'm going to show you how to do it on the other side. Okay, it's a pretty simple process, but the first thing you're going to want to do is take out the bolt at the bottom of the shock. Here's the end side of the bolt, and here's the nut. Just go from the top of the shock and all the way to the bottom, and you'll see there's a bolt going all the way through it, and you're going to want to take that out first. It will either be two 19mm or 2 3/4. I'm not sure. I don't really remember. But you're going to want to get a ratchet on one side and a wrench on the other side. If you've never taken your suspension apart, keep in mind it might be extremely tight or corroded on there, and it could be very difficult to get off. You might need to use some heat or some WD-40 to help take some corrosion off so you can get that bolt out. But you're going to want to take that out first. I was able to break it free with a breaker bar pretty easily. I didn't need to get under the car, but I will say my first time taking this out, I needed to get under the car and I struggled quite a bit taking it out. But also at that time, I didn't own a breaker bar, so that made it a lot easier. I can put that bolt to the side, and next thing you'll be going after is this castle nut right here. Keep in mind, do not take this castle nut out before you take out that bolt, or else it'll release a lot of tension and it'll droop, and it'll make taking out that bolt extremely difficult. Right now, if you take out this bolt, it lines up pretty good. The holes line up within the suspension and the actual shock itself, and usually you can just lift up on this a little bit, or it'll just slide completely out with no problems. One thing with Lexus that I actually had never seen before I had started working on this was this style of cotter key. The straight piece goes straight through the nut, as you may think, and then this hook goes around the outside and it hooks on and stays in like that. And the way to take it off is not by pulling as hard as you can. You have to pull this hook side out, grab this hook side and pull it out this way. And then you should be able to just slide it completely out. My first time, I didn't really understand how these worked, and I just kept pulling as hard as I could until I eventually broke the key, and I can't reuse it. But that's not too big of a deal. If you have any cotter keys laying around, then you can just use one of those in there. It's just not as convenient when you need to take it apart again next time. These ones that Lexus have are a lot more convenient to take out, but I figured I'd let you know how to take them out. Once you get that cotter key out, all it should be is a 17mm, and it should come right out. One thing you now may have noticed is that this piece hasn't actually fallen off of this bolt. You will need to hammer on this piece of metal right here to get it to finally fall. My first time, it took quite a bit to finally get it to fall off. It was corroded pretty good up here. But when you're doing that, just make sure you don't hit this boot right here or tear it. Just be very mindful of where you're hitting. And don't hit the threads or the bottom of this, or you could damage them and not be able to put the castle nut back on. A couple hits with a hammer and it's finally loose. And you can just pull that up and it'll fall completely out. You can just grab that and push it out of the way, and now you have a lot of room to work here. We are just about done taking this out. Now you'll need to open up your hood and come over here to your shock towers and take out these 3 bolts, and your shock should just come completely out. And these 3 bolts again should just be 3 15 millimeters. Your shock should now be completely loose. Now look at that. Now you'll just have to finagle it a little bit and you'll be able to get it out. It's kind of difficult with one hand here, but there we go. Now your shock is completely out. One thing I will say before I actually start installing this is when I first bought these MaxSpeedingRod coilovers, this sleeve right here on the rears, I believe, yeah, there's grease inside of there from me installing this bushing here. These sleeves right here were way too long and I wasn't able to lower the rears enough. And I actually had to reach out to MaxSpeedingRods and ask them about it, and they ended up sending me shorter sleeves. I'll show you the old ones here real quick. Here are the old sleeves for the MaxSpeedingRod coilovers, and even with these completely maxed out, the rears wouldn't even go lower than stock ride height. So I had to get different sleeves from MaxSpeedingRods, and hopefully you don't end up having the same problem. But they were really, really good about it. They just asked me about it. I sent them some pictures, and they just sent them to me for free. But that is one thing I will mention before putting these on. And also, I'm actually kind of struggling to remember which ones was for the rears and which ones was for the front. I probably should know this, but I think the only reason why I'm going to know is because this one has grease inside of that, and that was for the rears. And this one doesn't have grease because it was installed by MaxSpeedingRod. So this right here should be the fronts. This should be the rears. You can see in these pictures from the email, if you want to go ahead and read those, they were super, super friendly and easy about it. They answered all my questions, and they ended up sending me a new sleeve, which was awesome and ended up working out really, really well. In that email, they also sent me a link on how to adjust these coilovers. So make sure you guys do your research on setting the preload on these springs, because I don't believe that they come from the factory with the correct preload set. So make sure you watch videos on how to set preload on your coilovers, or else you could end up with some really, really wonky corners and some weird riding. Sorry, one more thing, but one other thing to keep in mind, when you do set the ride height on one corner of your car and you lower it down and you think you really, really like it, but you haven't set the ride height on all 4 corners yet, do not go with that ride height. You will need to set it the same on both sides. Otherwise, the geometry will be off and it'll actually be lower or higher than what the ride height that you thought you got. So make sure you set all 4 corners, lower it down, see how it looks, and then from there you can decide if you want to go lower or higher. Otherwise, you'll just end up messing around with it for a long time. Ask me how I know. Also, I have these coilovers set a little bit higher than I actually want them to be, because I'm expecting them to settle a little bit as I drive and compress a little bit more. So I have them set probably 1/2 inch to 1 inch higher than what I actually want, and I'm going to see how far they settle. Maybe I'll adjust them lower or higher later on, but I think it should work out fine when I go get my alignment, and it should look good. And if you're curious on how low I actually set my fronts and my rears, this is my rears with the different sleeve on it. There's about, I don't know, 4 1/4 right there of thread. And then on the fronts, I have about 5 exactly on how much threads are showing right here. And this is after setting preload. I already got my ride height figured out for the most part during the winter, so this should work out good. I'll put the link to the video that MaxSpeedingRod sent me to set the preload on these coilovers, so you can do it yourself. I'll put the link down in the description here. Now that's enough blabbering. Let's get to installing these coilovers on the front of the car. All right, I got the coilover installed on this side. It went extremely smoothly. Now it's time to do the other side, and that's where I'll show you how to do it. All right, I got these top bolts put in for this coilover. You're gonna wanna do that first. It's not too hard to do. Just hold the bottom and line up the bolts with the holes. Just put it up into there, and then you can hand tighten these bolts. It's pretty easy to reach around, especially because it's a car, but the rear end will be a little bit of a different story. Next thing you're gonna wanna do is twist this so it's lined up with these holes. If it's not lined up perfectly, you can put a jack up underneath this brake rotor and jack it up so that these holes right here line up with your coilover holes and you'll be able to put the bolt through. But before you can put the bolt through, you're going to want to put these bushings in first. Otherwise it won't fill in that gap very good. You can just pull this back right here. Let me see if I can record this real quick. It's kind of hard with only one hand. But you're going to want to pull this back and put that bushing in and then just let it relax again. Now from here, you should be able to put the bolt through. I'm going to move some stuff around, maybe lift up a little bit, wiggle it around. Here, 1 second. Let me lift up from the bottom of the brake rotor, and there it goes. And now the bolt is all the way through. Put your washer on and tighten it all up. Now that we got that bolt tightened up, you can bring this back down and shove it through here and put the castle nut back on. Now once you got this tightened up, tighten it up to a point where you can line it up with one of these holes so you could shove your cotter pin back through. Make sure you do use a cotter pin or something at least. This will prevent it from coming unthreaded and loosening up on you. Alright, now that I got the coilover set on both sides, I'm going to put my wheels back on, make sure that I can turn full lock both ways. I'm not 100% sure if I can do that with the stock wheels. I'm 99% sure I could do it with my aftermarket ones. But I won't be putting those on yet because I still need to go get new tires on them. And then once I do that, I'll put all 4 wheels on and bring the car in for an alignment. But for now, these will be going back on. Then I'm going to be putting on some plastics and stuff that I took off earlier. That won't be in the video. I already put the undercarriage plastics on. Then I'm going to flip this car around, bring it back in, and I'll start on the rears. Alright, I got the car dropped down. It is quite a bit lower in the front. I'm still expecting a lot of settle up front, like I was talking about before. So I'm thinking that will drop down about halfway in between that gap and it'll end up being perfect for what I want anyways. I had to put blocks up underneath so I didn't get my jack stuck underneath the car, but this is how it looks for now. There's about 3 fingers inside of there right now, and I'm expecting it to drop down enough to where I could only shove 2 in. Alright, I'm at the back of the car and I'm taking out the shock right now. It's going to be very, very similar to the front, but with this, you're actually going to have to take out your rear seats. And to start off, just like the last one, you'll have to take out that bottom bolt first, make everything loose. This time you won't have anything to hammer on right here. I did hammer on this to get it out of that thing pinching it. And then I will now have to take out the rear seats so I could get to the top of the shock and loosen it there. I'm not going to show in this video how to take your back seats out, but once you do get them out, you'll be able to see here in the back, this is your top hat right here. And these bolts are what you're going to have to take off, and it'll be on the same on both sides. It'll be a little bit of a tight fit, but you should be able to get them no problem. Okay, this is just a cover for the actual top hat, but there are 3 nuts and they're 14 millimeters. And once you get that off, it'll actually expose what you need to loosen and take out. After quite a bit of finagling, I was able to shove the end of the shock down into that gap, and then I pulled the top out right here, and now I have the shock sitting right here. This will be the same for both sides. It's not too bad of a job, especially if you've already taken this apart before. The hardest part is definitely getting that bolt out and loosening that. And now we can finally install our new coilovers. All right, now just like the front, you'll have to line the holes up there and get some nuts started over here. It helps a lot to have a friend that while you're holding it right here, you can get some nuts started, but I was able to do it by myself even without this jack. Once I got the holes lined up there, I just held it over here, had my nuts within reach, and I was able to go around and tighten them down by hand and get it to hold like that. And then now we can do the same as we did on the other side, or on the fronts. And I'm gonna have to jack this up so these holes line up, and you'll have to get that bolt right here put back through. Also, the exact same as the other side, you'll have to put these bushings in on both sides before you put the bolt through. All right, with a little bit of grease, I was able to get that bolt through, and I got it all tightened up.
The only thing that I don't really like, I'm sure it's kind of hard to see inside of here, but the two flanges that the bolt goes through and this goes through the middle, the two pieces of metal on the outside that you shove the bolt through, if that makes any sense, you actually have to pinch them. It pinches them because this is not wide enough. It pinches those two flanges together so you could actually get it tight. And I really, really wish that it was the same width as the stock shocks, wherever I put those. I wish it was the same width so I wasn't actually pinching those with the bolt as I tighten them, but I don't know how else to get them tight unless I shoved some more washers in there or something like that to make it fill the gap better. But anyways, the shock is in on this side. I'm about to go start on the other side. On this side, I actually had a lot more difficulties taking this bolt out. You can see as soon as the bolt came out, the shock dropped from here to here. So there was a lot of tension pushing down on this bolt. As soon as it gets through one hole, the bolt would start doing this, and it would cause a lot of misalignment. You can get a jack to jack up in some spots to kind of help. I hammered on this piece right here. I hammered slightly on the shock, just make sure not to damage it too much. And some vibration helped a lot to start pulling this out. Another thing that helps a lot is when it's inside of there, put a drill on this side and spin it or loosen it like you're loosening the bolt even though there's no threads. Have it spin and then push with something on this opposite side right here. So as it's spinning, you're pushing it out and it helps guide it out a lot easier. And then combine all that, some hammering up right here, hammering here, and then spinning this as you're pushing it out, and a lot of wiggling and vibration, and it'll eventually come out. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but just use some of those tricks and it should make it a lot easier. All right, all 4 coilovers are on. It's significantly lower than it was before, that's for sure. I still expect the suspension to drop a little bit more or settle in a little bit more, and it'll get a little bit lower, hopefully about 2 fingers width between the fender and the tire. I'm also not sure how it's going to fit with my other wheels, so I'm not going to mess with it for now. I'm going to drive it a little bit, but not too much because I don't want too much uneven tire wear. But I also want the suspension to settle in a little bit before I go and get an alignment. But for now, it looks a lot better. And it's time to test out these max speeding rods and see how bad they actually are. All right, we went for our maiden voyage and the car has already settled a significant amount. Before, 3 fingers was almost tight in there. Now I can't even get 3 fingers in there. Now it's 2 perfectly, and that is on both sides here, which is awesome. The ride is definitely significantly stiffer than stock suspension. Like, it's crazy stiff now, but I didn't have any rubbing. It didn't rub up there, even over a couple hard bumps. It might start rubbing once I change the wheels, and that will in turn, I'll have to tuck the wiring harness. There's not a huge amount of clearance turning that way, but there is enough clearance, and the car looks a lot better. All right, I'm on my way to my alignment, and I'm also gonna get my new tires put on. I lowered my car another 1/2 inch because I wasn't really happy with the height. But yeah, we should be good to go, and I'm excited to see the after results. I got her started up and we're about ready to go to the car show. Whatever measurements I told you guys earlier with the coilovers, just go down another 1/2 inch if you want to get the exact same ride height as me. It's not exactly perfect fitment, but it's good enough so I don't bottom out all the time and I'm not scraping, but it still looks good in my opinion anyways. But man, it has made a world of a difference. That alignment definitely helped a lot of things. My toe was really out, and so was my camber. And then I got new tires on, which is nice. Super cheap tires, but I don't really care. And yeah, she's looking really good. This will actually be the first car show I've ever put her in, so I'm kind of excited. All right, I just got back from the car show and everybody absolutely loved the car.
It went really, really well. It was a beautiful day. It was the first show that I'd ever put this Lexus into, and I got a lot of compliments and kudos for it. I actually ended up winning an award. It was for the best stereo. I didn't think I'd actually win that, but I do got a pretty clean sounding stereo, and I ended up winning it, so I'm happy. I'm happy. First car show ever with this thing, and I already won an award. Can't complain about that. So far, I haven't had any problems with my suspension. It's definitely a lot more stiff than stock suspension, but that's to be expected. I'm riding at like, I don't know, a finger and a half in between the fender and the tire, and I'm not having any rubbing up in there. And I don't think I'm at all concerned about the harness yet. If I start rubbing, then I'll tuck the harness, but at this ride height, I think I'm okay. And yeah, it looks awesome. I'm super, super happy with it. If I end up having any problems with these MaxSpeedingRod coilovers, then I'll make an update video, but I'm probably about 100 miles into driving these, probably 30 to 40 miles driving with an alignment, and everything's been doing really, really awesome. So no complaints here yet. We'll see if anything ends up happening. I'm happy with them. Hopefully this helps some of you guys out on installing coilovers onto your Lexus LS400. It's not too bad, and it definitely changes the whole look of the car. I've had a lot of guys ask me how the MaxSpeeding coilovers feel, and I'll be giving updates later on down the road, or if I end up having any problems, I'll give updates. But as of right now, it's a thumbs up for me. I don't think you can slam it way lower than this, or else you will have problems, as in like it not being stiff enough, which that's what the main complaint that I've heard about these, and also them blowing out on some people. But again, I don't think I'll really have those problems, especially with it keeping a pretty decent ride height. I'm not completely slamming it. I'm just and making it look a lot cleaner in my opinion. So yeah, I'll give an update video later on if I end up having any problems, but for now, it's good for me. I'm happy.